While there may no longer be realistic Super Bowl aspirations in New York, Jets fans enter every season with a little bit of optimism. And this year, do they have a point? Because this roster is pretty talented, but can they take the next step and end the dreaded playoff drought in New York? Welcome back, everybody, to 32 on 32 here on Chase's Sports News, where we preview every NFL team season with a team reporter. Today, we preview the New York Jets' upcoming season with a very special guest, a writer and columnist on the beat for New York for NY Daily News, Antoine Staley. Antoine, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it.
It's good to be with you.
It's good to be with you as well. I'm so happy you are here to talk some New York Jet football. I know you know it just as well as anyone. Real quick before we break down some of the nitty gritty, specific things about this roster on this depth chart, look at the schedule. What has stood out to you, or what did stand out to you from training camp and the Jets preseason action?
Probably just Aaron Glenn and just him trying to establish his culture. I mean, I think that's the first and foremost, and I think a lot of that had to entail just the team just taking all his personality and also demonstrating physicality, which included like live tackling during practices, which is kind of a lot of teams don't necessarily do that anymore. So, but the Jets are trying to be a physical team, something like they haven't been in a really long time. So I think that's what stood out to me. Obviously, just Glenn and just, the way that he's working with the players and talking, just, S's and O's are out there on the field. And, he's very blunt. He'll definitely let you know where you stand if you ask him. So I think, just looking at those things, that's kind of first and foremost the things that stood out to me at training camp in the preseason.
I mean, Aaron Glenn certainly does need to establish a culture because it's just a complete overhaul of the roster after last season, and kind of an overhaul of just the team as in general, like at general manager as well. You go into last year, the conversation's different. Fans have Super Bowl aspirations. You have a talented roster, a fully healthy Aaron Rodgers, but things just fell apart across the board. You can blame Rodgers a little bit. Robert Saleh was fired early on in the season. Jets lost a lot of close games. How come a team that was projected for so much success finished with a lousy 5-12 record?
Because they weren't that good. That's basically what it is. I don't like a lot of people look at them. I never thought they were a Super Bowl team. Like I never did. Like just one player does not necessarily put you over the top. Maybe it could, but if you're
But
Tom Brady,
here's my question to you, Antoine. They were a 7-win team with Zach Wilson. How do you get worse when the roster on paper look better?
it's a good question. I think part of it is like when you fire your coach. I mean, that basically just set the trend. It just basically turned it as a snowball effect. They were 2-3 at the time. They probably would have won 7 or 8 games. I think had they kept Robert Saleh last year. But the fact is, they fired him after a 2-3 start. They only won 3 more games after that. So when they time in the NFL, it's unlike any other sport. When you fire your coach mid-season, you're typically done. Like you're not gonna recover from that. Like it's not enough games in the season where you can establish that chemistry and get that continuity with a new coach and also fired Joe Douglas, their GM too as well. So they prematurely fired Salah. I thought, although they probably would have been ended up
Yeah.
in the same position anyway. But I typically think that to answer your question, firing the coach hardly ever works in the NFL. Like it's very little instances where they do work. I think the Raiders are one of them in 2020, 21. But outside of that, like very rarely does a team, make the playoffs when they go to an interim coach midseason.
And that was my initial gut reaction when I saw the news that he was fired because, yes, I never bought the Super Bowl hype either. I actually projected them to miss the playoffs before the season because I just didn't think it was going to work. But I thought, all right, you have Robert Saleh. You could probably at least make the playoffs. And it was kind of the point of look at what he did with Zach Wilson. Now he has Aaron Rodgers. Whatever level Rodgers is at, he's still better than what Zach Wilson was. So theoretically, this team should just get better. But it was a premature firing. They absolutely panicked. And I think they just completely overthought it. And even you had Devontae Adams, and the team just somehow found a way to get worse. So the Jets go into the offseason, they botch the Aaron Rodgers era, fire interim head coach Jeff Ulbrich, or I guess just don't bring him back. And then you also fire general manager Joe Douglas. Now you have Aaron Glenn, as you mentioned, and Darren Mougey as general manager. What were your thoughts on those two hirings as the Jets completely switch regimes and switch kind of the direction of the franchise?
I really didn't know much about Mousy, to be honest with you, at the time. So, but as far as like Aaron Glenn, at least initially, I thought that made a lot of sense to him because of like his history with the Jets, obviously him being a high candidate as far as like what he did with the Lions and all their success too. So I actually thought he would be the best hire for them. And then obviously they hired him and then put Bougie with him. And so far it seems like it's been a good pairing too. They seem like they've worked together well, just transforming the roster to what it was now. It's probably more of a youth movement as opposed to more of a veteran latent roster
Sure.
too as well. So yeah, I definitely think that so far so good. But at the time, like I say, Mougey, I really didn't know much about, honestly, coming from Denver. But Glenn, like I thought it was a really good hire at the time.
I think also, from what I've heard from other people, it feels like the energy in for this Jets team is different. Can you maybe talk about the culture that Aaron Glenn is establishing as he's trying to flip the script on a franchise that kind of reached a new low last year when people thought that wasn't even possible?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to initially what I was saying. Like, yeah, just talk about just trying to establish just a toughness with them. Like, I think last year they lost a lot of, as you alluded to, lost a lot of close games there at the end. Whether it be on the offensive side of the ball, defensive side of the ball, because I don't think either side played particularly well. I know the defense, was ranked third statistically, but if you look at their numbers, the last 12 weeks of the season, they were not a top three defense at all, like
Sure.
statistically. So yeah, I think both sides of it just need to clean some stuff up there. I think Aaron Glenn is trying to establish, like I say, to get them to tackle better, also to not to commit less penalties. The Jets have led the league in penalties the last couple of years, and I think that's a point of emphasis for him. So that goes into him just trying to change the culture of the organization and try not to get them to make boneheaded mistakes consistently.
Let's talk about Darren Mougey here in his first off season with the Jets. I think he's done some solid things. We got Arbon Membu in the first round, and then obviously Justin Fields at quarterback was the big addition. What have you thought about Mougey thus far and the moves he's made in offseason #1 in New York?
I mean, it still needs to. I mean, it's still some areas that I guess they need to clean up. I mean, you're not going to be able to clean up all the holes like in one off season. So, especially considering the amount of roster turnover that they had. So, they picked up Justin Fields there. We'll see if he's a long term solution there. He is assigned to a 2-year contract. Basically, it's a 1-year deal. It's either this is probably his really last opportunity, I think, to be a starting quarterback in this league. And if it doesn't work out, then I think the Jets will be in position to draft the quarterback next year in a much better, I think, quarterback draft in
Sure.
2026. So yeah, I think you look at that. Also, the lack of wide receiver options too as well. I did like the Amon Membu pick too as well. I did. A lot of people wanted Tyler Warren or some other kind of offensive weapon, but to fortify that offensive line, especially considering you have a quarterback that likes to run and use his legs to try to make plays with his on the football field. I think it's a pretty good move there. And defensively, I did like the Harrison Phillips move there that they made a few days ago to kind of solidify that the run defense there, which has been an issue. But yeah, so far, he has done some good things there, but also like we're not going to necessarily know until the season starts and see how the Jets perform out there.
Sure. Yeah, 100%. And I just think that when you look at this New York Jets team, obviously they needed to clean up the offensive line. They did that. You also get cornerback Brandon Stevens on the defensive side of the ball. But two things that stood out were the extensions to Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson. While this team isn't in contending mode, what were your thoughts on getting both of those guys locked up long term?
Look, it was smart because the longer you wait to, get an extension done, the more money is going to be ultimately. So to be able to get those deals done, especially before training camp, I thought it was really smart. And also you limit the distractions coming into training camp because now if it had they waited, all we would have been asking about when's the Sauce Gardner deal getting done, when's the Garrett Wilson deal getting done. And now you took care of those before training camp, before you even stepped on the facility. Now, they can just put that behind them and just focus on the season. And those guys can, just focus on just trying to, do everything they can to try to snap this, 14-game postseason drought.
You're talking about a guy who's probably not going to get extended right now with his recent play. It's Brees Hall, obviously not a first round pick, so doesn't have the opportunity for the fifth round option or the 5th-year option. What does the future hold for Brees Hall? Is he going to bounce back? It looked like he kind of disappointed expectations last year.
Well, I will say this: like, it doesn't help that the quarterback Aaron Rodgers kind of checked out of a lot of plays last year. They didn't run the ball a lot. Like, I think
Right.
that's part of it. I don't think it's all his fault. I also think this regime in place before this one, especially with Nathaniel Hackett, didn't always know how to use Brees Hall too as well. They didn't necessarily know that he was a good pass catcher out the backfield, in addition to his running ability. All that to say is like Brees Hall understands what it is. He understands that this is kind of a make or break year for him. Obviously, he's still going to be in NFL somewhere, whether it be with the Jets or somewhere else next year. But you're looking at it as far as like him trying to get paid, and he sees other running backs getting this big time money, and I'm sure he's yearning for that big payday too as well. So I expect him to have especially considering the Jets wide receiver room or, lack thereof, the weapons, I think he's going to be a contributor in both the passing game and also the running game. So I think, all purpose yards, I think he could have a, pretty solid year, maybe like 1,500, 1,600 yards, just combined yardage. But, rushing yards, he's going to split carries with Braylon Allen, also Isaiah Davis too, as well. So, yeah, I mean, they're not going to just focus solely on Breece Hall and have him be the bell cow. They're going to use a variety of different running backs, sort of what they did in Detroit the last few years with Gibbs and also David Montgomery.
Sure, and I mean, Hall could still be fine statistically. I mean, last year he had almost 1,400 all-purpose yards. It's not like the guy was ineffective. He just wasn't as efficient as you thought, as fans and analysts were thinking he would be. But it's also not all his fault. I know we kind of touched on this, and now we're kind of going back. It'll be interesting when the Jets play the Steelers in Week 1. Who do you think was more at blame for the results that were just horrible last year in New York? Do you blame Aaron Rodgers, or do you blame the Jets and the system around them?
I don't think it's one person that you can secretly blame for
Right.
lack of success. Like, I think it's equal people are, for the blame for the lack of success for the Jets. Aaron Rodgers didn't play well. I mean, that's just basically what it is. Let's just call it what it is. I think he would tell you he didn't play well in spots too. He committed a lot of turnovers there, didn't always make the right reads there. And also, I kind of think he, wanted to throw the ball a little bit more than I think the Jets should have. But yeah, you factor that in, you factor Woody Johnson firing Robert Saleh, you factor Jeff Ulbrich and the lack of adjustments that they made too. So yeah, I don't think you can just put the blame on one sole person there. I think a lot of people are to blame for, the last couple years, or really, the last 14 years of the Jets and, their futility and just, their struggles. But yeah, definitely, yeah, it's a lot of blame to go around for last year in particular.
Of course, and now the Jets are completely moving on. You have Justin Fields, a quarterback, as we mentioned. He was, I think, 4-2 with Pittsburgh last year as a starter
Yes.
before Russell Wilson stepped in midseason and took over the rest of the year. I mean, we've seen Fields do incredible things on the ground in Chicago. He really has not been that consistent starting quarterback. You mentioned how this may be his final opportunity to prove his worth at the pro level as a starting level quarterback. Do you believe he will find success in that role for the Jets this coming season?
It remains to be seen because he definitely struggled in training camp too. I mean, he was very uneven, kind of like his whole career has been thus far as a passer. Held the ball too long at times. Also was inaccurate there as well. Really struggled in the preseason game against the Giants, where against their front four, whether it be the joint practice or also the preseason game, he had more rushing yards in the preseason game than he had passing. So yeah, I think the lack of weapons that's around him. Darren Mougey said they like the weapons that are around Justin Fields too as well.
Right.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what they think, and they think they have a good enough team to be able to compete, offensively. And he's going to have to try to make do with what they have. But yeah, I have a hard time believing that you're setting up your quarterback for the best success possible when you have this. Garrett's really good, but outside of that, I do like Mason Taylor. I like that pick too as well. I think he has an opportunity to be second in receiving catches this year, along with Breece Hall. But outside of that, Josh Reynolds, I know Tyler Johnson's on the practice squad there, Arian Smith too, Xavier Gibson. Doesn't give a whole lot of confidence there heading into the season as far as the wide receiver core and the weapons around them.
Right, and if the Jets are to overachieve and Justin Fields is a big part of that, that would signal with the supporting cast that, like, yes, he could be the real deal because you're right, outside of Garrett Wilson, there's not much going on there. So it's going to be really telling about if Justin Fields can be that, high-level, starting-level quarterback in the National Football League. I want to talk about the defense because they were one of the best in the NFL for a few years. Then last year, they took a gigantic step back. Are they going to kind of be at par with where they were in previous years and have that bounce-back season here in 2025?
I think they could too. I think, like I said, I think everything just kind of unraveled when Saleh got fired. I mean, they did finish third in yards allowed, but again, that's a bit of a mirage too because I think they were so good against the pass early on that those numbers kind of a bit skewed there, where they gave up a lot of rushing yards, they gave up a lot of passing yards late in the season. Also, outside of Will McDonald and Quinnen Williams, who got tripled and doubled and triple teamed at times last year, they didn't necessarily have a somebody else that can rush the passer consistently. Now you get Jermaine Johnson back from Achilles injury. Will McDonald was coming off a 10.5 sack season. Also have Quentin Williams still there, one of the best defensive tackles in football, and he also made an addition with Harrison Phillips. So I think that's the front four is really good, in a good place there. Re-signed Jamie Sherwood, and also have Quincy Williams, who did miss a lot of tackles last year, but I think with this defense the way it's going to be, where it's going to be a lot more blitzing, a lot more man-to-man coverage, I think it kind of suits suits what their strengths are, especially considering, you have Sauce Gardner, who I think is a really good, guy that can play man-to-man coverage too as well. And he's also looking for a bounce back year too as well.
Before we break down the Jets' schedule and wrap up, I do want to ask you one quick thing, and it's about the kicking game. That was something, the Jets had a lot of inconsistency last year. Greg Zuerlein starting the year at kicker. Now you have Nick Folk, who, if I'm correct, has led the NFL in field goal percentage in back-to-back years. So what are your thoughts about having Folk with the Jets? Will the kicking issue be resolved?
Well, I think he's in a better place than what it was. Other Harrison Mavis, who was there in training camp in the preseason too, as well, in addition to Nick Folk. But yeah, I think when you have an offense that's going to struggle to score points potentially, you need to make sure you have a veteran kicker in place like Nick Folk, who can make sure you get those 3 points whenever you have an opportunity. So yeah, it's definitely in a much better place, at least I think, going into the year. But had you asked me that last year with Greg Zuerlein, I probably would have told you the same thing, because I don't think anybody was projecting him having to fall off that he did. One thing that is notable about Folk, he is a little bit older than Zuerlein. He's in his 40s, so it is something to keep in mind too. I do think he can still have a good year, as kickers have had success in their 40s, but there's also something to note too as well, and put in the context that he is of the age where a decline could happen at any year, any moment.
Adam Vinatieri is like, hold my beer, I can kick at any age. So yeah, I mean, we'll have to see. I mean, accuracy wise, Folk has been there, but you never know. When you're 40 years old, father time could hit you quick. So that'll be the conversation for sure. I'm at the kicking spot. We do this for every team. Let's take a quick look at the Jets schedule and my projection. Jets fans are not going to like what I have for them right here, but it's a 6-11 record, and I understand that they have an easier schedule comparatively, but I just don't know if things are going to work out. And as you can see, I have them struggling very much so at the beginning of the year. What stands out to you from the schedule? 6-11 sound right?
Well, that's exactly what I had in my preview. So yeah, I don't have them beating Tampa Bay though. I have them probably losing their first, 5 or 6 games potentially. But I do have them with a 6-11 record, because I think as tough as the schedule is early on, and it's very difficult. You play 4 playoff teams from last year in your first 6 games, and you get Dallas week 5, you get the Dolphins week 4 on the road too as well, and you end the season in Buffalo, which that will be the last game in that stadium too. So it's not going to be easy at all, whether front to back. But I think it's some opportunities for some wins later on in the season after the bye week. You got the Browns there, you got New England twice there. I think they can split with the Patriots there, Falcons maybe, depending on what you think about Atlanta, Jacksonville also as well. So I think it's a team where they're going to struggle early, but I think ultimately they're going to get things right to the point where we go into 2026 and we're like, okay, this team was kind of trending upwards like towards the end of the season, and then let's see where they can go next year in 2026 with maybe a different quarterback, maybe some more talent around the team offensively and defensively.
I mean, the jury is still out on whether Fields could be that franchise quarterback, but if he is not that type of guy, I mean, I'm looking here at the schedule. I think Rodgers is probably still better. Josh Allen's better. Baker Mayfield's better. I think Tua's better. I think Dak Prescott, Bo Nix. We'll see what Bryce Young. I'm not high on him. Joe Burrow. You go through the schedule, and in most of these games in a quarterback league, they're going to have the second best quarterback on the field. And so I think that that's also something to keep an eye out for as well. I also want to touch on that week 1 game. How crazy is that with Rodgers coming back to MetLife?
It'd definitely be a great atmosphere too. I mean, obviously, a lot of people wanted Rodgers to have a lot of success with the Jets. Obviously, that didn't happen, and now he gets to kind of exact revenge on the Jets. And then on the flip side, also Justin Fields too. I mean, he was with the Steelers last year. There, he went 4-2. A lot of people thought they were just going to stick with Justin Fields last year. Well, and then they ended up starting Russell Wilson crazy enough against the Jets on Sunday Night Football. Right. That was his first game back, and they ended up beating the Jets there. So I'm sure he wants to stick it to the Steelers there, because they decided, I know they were interested in Fields, but ultimately they decided to go in a different direction, and ended up signing with the Jets there. And so yeah, I'm sure it's going to be a revenge game on both sides. So it's definitely going to be a great atmosphere. I expect a lot of Steeler fans to be at MetLife Stadium.
I know Ian Eagle is announcing that game. I just had Ian on my podcast, and we were talking about that game, and he's so excited for it, the electric atmosphere. It's obviously going to be a lot of fun. Antoine, this has been awesome. You mentioned 6-11, but let's talk about the best case scenario in New York. You have all the talent there. Say Justin Fields does work out. What is, do you think, the ceiling of this football team? What can they achieve this year if things, click together?
Maybe second place in, the AFCs, maybe 8, maybe 9 wins, depending on who you ask there. I think they would have to, the offense would obviously have to play a lot better too. And I think their defense would have to, win some games for them. I mean, we've seen it in the past where the last few years where their defenses, also, take the reins a little bit and score some points there and, won some games as well. So, yeah, I think if they can, rely on that defense there and get back to their like 2022, 23 form, in addition to having Justin Fields don't not turn the ball over and use his legs to kind of, make some plays down the field. Maybe you can, get 8 or 9. I just don't see this team being a playoff team, to be honest with you, on any level, just not because defensively whatsoever. It's just the offensive end and the lack of weapons. And you got to be able to score points at some point. Like you just can't, go out there, especially in today's NFL, and expect, to win games, win every single game, 14-10, 17-14. Like this is not, what this league is anymore. Now you have to be able, I think you have to score at least, 21 to 24 points consistently to be able to have a chance to win every Sunday.
Yeah, that's certainly not a sustainable way to have success. We'll see what the New York Jets do this season. All the links to Antoine's dailies work covering the team this season are in the description below. Antoine, we appreciate you taking the time today to help us preview the Jets season, one of the 32 here we're previewing on Chase's Sports News. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming on the show here today. We're going to wrap things up, Jets fans. Right, let us know in the comments what you think is going to happen this season, and be sure to subscribe if you're an NFL fan or a Jet fan, so you don't miss any more of our NFL coverage, as we're just not even 2 weeks away from the start of the NFL season. Alongside Antoine's Daily of NY Daily News, I'm your host, Chase Coburn, saying so long from Chase's Sports News.